So the liaison of the International Olympic Academy Participants Association, Dimitris Regalos, will talk about the revival of Olympic sports, the case of life-saving as a sport.
So my mentor once told me, never clap before you hear what someone has to say. So I'll try to be brief and meaningful. Today I'm here to present to you the revival of the Olympic sports, the case of life-saving as a sport. My name is Dimitris Regalos. I'm a lecturer, teacher, and the first idea. Yes. So the first idea that came to my mind when I was thinking about life-saving and lifeguarding as a concept was the seventh, okay? So after I put some effort into getting to know life-saving, many more images and feelings arise and gave me a different perspective on the activity and the sport itself. After a couple of championship and events, the IOC recognized competitive life-saving as a sport, but not as an Olympic sport to be considered for the Olympic program, although it seems to fit many of the requirements. But I will take us a couple of steps backwards in order to understand thoroughly the concept of sport and the concept of what an Olympic sport is. The structure of our discussion will include what is the sport, what is an Olympic sport, is there any change in the concept of Olympic sport, and the case of life-saving as an Olympic sport. Sport. During my lectures, and when we discuss what is truly sport, many of my students ask me why kiting is not considered a sport, why chess is not considered a sport, why esports are not considered a sport, why shooting is considered a sport, and why making pancakes is not considered for the World's Athletic Championships. For us to understand what activity is considered a sport and not just a physical activity, we need to define different correlated terms regarding to sports. Human kinetic activities can be observed in many cultures and through the span of centuries. Some of those activities we consider as games. Younger or older, during your lifetime you found yourself walking on the pavement and trying not to step on the lines of the pavement, or you're trying to set a competition with a car passing by and you try to reach first the tree in front of you. To play a game is to engage in activities aimed at achieving a particular state using only the means permitted by the rules when the rules prohibit more effectively efficient means and when those rules are accepted to what such activity is possible. Sport, on the other hand, is a more organized way of conducting athletic activities, let's say, with similar characteristics as the game's definition. Jim Parr in 2019 proposed the definition for sport as the institutionalized, rule-governed contest of human physical skill. But what that means? As a human, we define that sports are human-conducted activities not made by animals, that focus on the human and not the technology or the nature. Rule govern, there are rules that monitor the activity and make it attainable. Institutionalized, governing bodies, international federation and national federations, are in charge of the activity, the rules and the athletes. Contest, of course, all sports are competitions or have a competitive nature. Physical, we define activities that mostly requires gross motor skills like jumping, running, swimming or throwing, and skills most of the time require skills that takes years to complete and to develop in order to compete and fulfill the activity. This definition of what is a sport can be considered a definition of a traditional sport and is further used to define Olympic sport. Some other type of sports with other defining characteristics may be the alternative sport, the lifestyle sport, and the extreme sport. Alternative sports are defined by their alternative values, alternative to the values of competitive, rule-governed, and traditional sports. Some of us see alternative sports as lifestyle sports, which are characterized as recently developed and dependent on new technologies, also required a commitment to attain particular type of intense experiences, and also require a commitment to a distinguished lifestyle and a particular social identity. Extreme sport, on the other hand, can be thought in terms of the level and type of risk encountered when participating in them, such as the possibility of sudden and catastrophic injury or even death. The type of sports that are included in the Olympic program is mostly the traditional sports, as we defined, that strongly liaise the athletic activities with the values of the Olympic movement. Bear in mind, because we usually forget it, that the Olympic movement is an educational movement that uses sports, the Olympic Games, and culture to improve and to progress life. Values such as excellence, friendship, and respect define the Olympic program and the athletic competition that athletes prepare for years to compete. Altius, Sitius, Fortius, and now Communis, higher, faster, stronger together, gently, let's say, pushes and motivates athletes to compete, to participate, and to achieve greatness. In the Olympic program, we can observe sports that use some other type of physical skills, let's say, like concentration, reaction, and adaptability, and some other sports that require not just the combination of different type of physical skill, but also creativity and kinesthesia to be beautiful. This show change in the breeze of the Olympic sports is further developed with the newly inducted sports to the Olympic program, like skateboarding and surfing, as many more instances fitting to the above mentioned situation. The Olympic movement, in the process of changing and improving life, maybe needs some new ideas and a different point of view on what it is supposed to represent. New people will follow the movement and will result in a broader change of lifestyle through the values presented by the same movement. But in our lust to call everything a sport nowadays and push forward the agenda that most everything can be considered an Olympic sport, maybe it will result in some negative issues. Many of the activities that started in sort of academic and administrative, sports administrative work, like the case of esports, maybe lead to not correctly using these activities as tools to further advance life and make humankind a bit more virtuous. The case of life-saving as an Olympic sport. One thing is certain, that competitive life-saving promotes the values and the philosophy of the Olympic movement and much more. It is an intense athletic activity that requires virtuous character and peak physical readiness. Competitive life-saving fits all the criteria of a traditional/Olympic sport. It is conducted by human athletes, rule governed, there are specific rules for the activity to be conducted. Institutionalized, we have a specific federation, international federation that regulates the sport. Contest, of course, life-saving as a sport has a competitive nature. And physical skills, this is a highly demanding athletic activity that requires excellent coordination of various motor skills. Concluding, I don't need the slides. Concluding, competitive life-saving is a unique, let's say, idea that not only fits the traditional sports criteria, but also the lifestyle sports criteria. It requires the human to be fully committed to the competitive idea, but also the life-guarding aspect as it pushes forward the agenda of the importance of human life. After all, the Olympic movement is all about human life and its progression of it. As one last closing remark to my personal belief, let's say, is that life-saving is something greater than just a sport, and it should be considered for the Olympic agenda, even if it's not included in the Olympic program. Thank you for your attention.